Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our town hall meeting today. We're going to have Interim President Randy Boyd up in just a few minutes, but I want to talk a little bit about why we're here and how we got here. As many of you know, Randy Boyd was selected in September of 2018 to be interim president as Joe DiPietro was retiring. And many of you also remember that in November, on his first day on the job, I believe it was the Monday after Thanksgiving, Randy Boyd came here and spent his first day on the job at UT Martin. Since then, it's been nonstop, and he's toured the state, he's toured the campuses, and he's been here numerous times. Prior to becoming the interim president, Randy Boyd was around state government quite a bit. He was the commissioner for. He also served as the director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. And in that role, he really kicked off and was the architect for the Drive to 55 program and also the architect of the Tennessee Promise, which later, in his role as interim president, led to creation and spawned a great idea for the UT Promise, which we've been promoting for the last year. Perhaps nearest and dearest to our hearts, he was the founder and co-chair of the Governor's Rural Task Force, which was a group that really looks at rural areas of Tennessee and bringing together government, industry, private business, and education to see if we can create some great solutions for the situations we find ourselves in rural areas. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Tennessee, had an emphasis in international management, and also earned a master's degree in liberal studies with a focus on foreign policy from the University of Oklahoma. Randy Boyd just received his annual evaluation last month at the UT Board of Trustees meeting. He got a great evaluation, and there was a lot of conversation about what's next. His role as interim was for a 2-year term. What the Board of Trustees is suggesting is that he be asked to serve another 5 years, drop the interim and become the University of Tennessee president, and for a total of 7 years. The board asks if he would go out and tour the campuses and do some town halls and be open for questions from students, faculty, staff, and community members. And we're a part of that process, and we're happy to have him here today. He's going to give some remarks and share his vision for the university and for his role. And then at that time, we're going to turn it over to question and answers. And we have two distinguished gentlemen that are going to help us with Q&A today. The first is Dr. Philip Smart, President of the Faculty Senate, and also Devin Majors, our two-term SGA President for UT Martin. So without any further ado, I give you Randy Boyd.
Okay, yeah, there we go. So thank you, Keith, for that introduction, and it's exciting to be back in Martin. I was doing some math and adding up how many times I've visited. This is the 16th visit. Actually, this is the 17th visit. 16 visits prior to this to UT Martin. Feels like it's been more, but I'm going to trust in the count. But every time is always inspirational. I love coming back home. I think many of you know this, but if you don't, my family's from this part of the state. We're from Kenton, home of the White School. You don't get this at any other campus across the state. I wouldn't even try it because I know I just get dead silent. So it's, you know you're home when people can finish that sentence. So it's always exciting to be back here. And you know, just a special digression, because I had a really heartwarming moment a few moments ago. I got to meet Ted Council. So maybe some of you might not know him. But it turns out that Ted, who was in charge of the police force for some years, used to be my grandfather's boss. So my grandfather, James Henry Boyd, actually worked in the police department here at UT Martin some time ago. So lots of connections to this part of the state, this university, and it's always exciting to be back here. And I'll maybe just say one other thing. So this is my last of the town hall visits to the different campuses. Some might suggest that I may have saved the best for last, but I couldn't say that because I need to be neutral. But what it is, I'm here on our last day, and I care so much about this place for a lot of reasons, but this is where my family's from. This is a region that I care and love. And if Northwest rural Tennessee is going to be successful, if it's going to have a future, it's going to come through the University of Tennessee Martin. We are so critical to this region, and is why UT Martin is so critical to our state and to this university system. So I'm here to make sure that we're listening, learning, and finding ways that we can help support and serve you better. And so I'm excited about being here today. So it's ironic, at the last Board of Trustees meeting, that the board said that I should come to all the campuses and do a listening visit, because 2 weeks prior to the board meeting, I'd sent Keith and all the other chancellors an email saying, you know, it's great coming to visit. Like the last time I came here, I spent half a day with the security team talking about Clery and Title IX and all the things we needed to do to improve that area, but I didn't really feel like I got a chance to spend much time with the faculty or the students. So I said, you know, I want to start coming one day each semester and visiting on the campus, an hour with the faculty and an hour with the students and an hour with your administration, your deans, and just have a deep dive where I have the opportunity to share some ideas, but then also to ask questions and learn. So this was already planned, and if I'm fortunate enough to continue to be able to serve, then each semester I plan on coming and doing more of this. Maybe it'll be in smaller groups and more conversational, but I look forward to being here on a more regular basis, having those kind of interactions as well. Then the board says, well, we think you should go around and visit all the campuses. So conveniently, this counts maybe, I guess, as my spring tour of the different campuses. But this one will be a little bit different. So it's not the way I'd originally planned it. So I'm going to do 3 things today. We'll do 3 things today. The first of which is I'm going to do a brief introduction. Some of you don't know me, and so I want to make sure that while I've got the chance, I'll take an opportunity just to share a little bit about my background. Those that were saying, well, so you're a dog fence salesman and you're running the University of Tennessee, tell me how that works. So I can maybe share a little bit more about my personal history. Then we're going to talk, as Keith mentioned, about our vision, about all the things we've accomplished together, and then all the things we're going to accomplish over the next decade. And then finally, we'll have a Q&A. And there's some that have been pre-sent in, then we'll have an opportunity for you to answer questions. In the future, the Q&A will be bilateral. I will want to be asking you questions. And the biggest question that I want to ask you, and I'll ask you every single time I come, and this is the question. This will be the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. Collectively, we've had 225 years of history together. We've had some great decades before, but how do we make this the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee? What things do we need to do to make that true? I'm going to share a few ideas that we already have, but the biggest, best idea that will define this decade, we haven't had yet. And so I'm excited about coming and listening and sharing ideas and bouncing ideas off of each other so we can make this the greatest decade collectively and for each individual campus, and particularly here at the University of Tennessee Martin. You might ask, and you should, so what do you think is the best decade in the history of the University of Tennessee? At the State of the University address about 3 weeks ago, I shared like 7 or 8 different decades for you to choose from, and then I picked mine. But for brevity, I just thought I'd share with you what I think is unarguably the best decade, but you can argue. We're a university, we can always find a way to argue and challenge. But I would encourage you to actually think about what you might think was the best decade. My personal pick is under Andy Holt, a West Tennessean, that led the University of Tennessee system from 1960 to 71. So obviously that's 11 years, so I'm going to take historical license and say the decade is from 61 to 71 is the greatest decade. And why that decade? In that decade, UT Knoxville allowed the first African American to enter our university, which was a historic event. In 1964, Andy Holt created the Institute of the Space Institute in Tullahoma. In 1968, very important, we created what is now referred to as our system, where UT Martin and UT Chattanooga joined in, and we all started working together. We also created the Institute of Agriculture that same year. In 1971, he created the Institute of Public Service, which supports training and leadership for cities and counties and law enforcement all across the state. Oh, and we also had a really good decade in enrollment growth. We're challenging ourselves across all of our campuses now to provide more access to more students. Well, during that decade, we had a pretty good increase. From 1961 to 1971, enrollment grew from 11,700 students to 37,400 students, a 300% increase. So when we talk about this being the greatest decade, that's a big challenge, but I think we're up to it. And I'd also say that this is not meant as any disrespect to those that came before us. I think they expect us to build on the foundation that they've given us and to make this the greatest decade. If we were asking ourselves to do anything less, I think they would be disappointed. So I think we owe that to them to make this the greatest decade. So I'm excited about all the things that we'll be doing together and all the ideas that we'll be sharing in future meetings. So on to the introduction. And again, I apologize for this, but I feel like it's necessary. It's part of this process. And also, I'm hopeful that we can do the introduction once and we never have to talk about me again. We talk about the ideas in the future. And I also do it a little bit but in self-defense, because the people that I meet across the state and across our universities that don't know me, and I'd say it's still a fairly big percentage, I'd say maybe 80% when they meet you or say, oh yeah, you're a businessman, and that could be taken two ways. Some say, oh, you're a businessman. So some don't think it's a good thing, or then some actually might think it is. I'd like to think I'm more of an entrepreneur than a businessman, but we'll talk about that a little bit. The other way in which people will know me, and I always kind of get a little frustrated with this, but it happens like, I don't know, 1 out of every 5 times. People will, Randy Boyd, oh, you're the guy that ran for governor. Thinking, swell. 60 years of life, the one thing that I failed miserably at, and that's the only thing you know me for. So there is a bit more to the story than just that. So first off, I'm the first one in my family's history to go to college. My grandfather, even though he came to college, he didn't actually get a degree here. My father, none of my family members ever went to a university. My mom and I thought it was very important for me to go, so my dad, who didn't think it was necessary, but he said, look, I won't give you the money to go to college, but I'll give you a job so you can pay your way through. Looking back, it was the best thing he ever did. I ran injection molding machines, making plastics, 2 12-hour shifts every weekend. I started University of Tennessee at Knoxville at age 16. I graduated at age 19. That's in some bio somewhere that you can find online, and I'm always worried people will read that and think, gosh, if he graduated at 19, he must be smart, and I don't want to start this relationship with false expectations. It's just that I'm cheap, and it turns out, as you know, it's cheaper to graduate early. So that's how that happened. At age 23, I started my first business, which was a failure. I think it's really good to get a failure out of the way early, and you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. 6 months later, I started a second company, which was really glamorous. It was a company that sold electric fencing for cattle and horses out of the back of a Dodge Maxi van with no air conditioning and no radio, calling on little feed stores all over the southeast, sleeping in $18 hotels every night. Those are the little hotels, by the way, that you see on the highway that's like 8 cinder block rooms with a gravel parking lot and a payphone on the outside, and you always wonder, like, who stays at a place like that? Electric fence salesmen stay at places like that. But when you start your own business, you do whatever you can to save money. And every penny that you're saving is going back to your family, so you do those things. I mentioned the van didn't have a radio and it didn't have air conditioning. No air conditioning because it just used up too much gas and I was cheap. But the radio was on purpose because I didn't want anything to distract my thoughts. I wanted to make sure that I was listening to my customer. I think the only way you know what your customers need, again, in this role too, is to listen. And so that was on purpose. Well, anyway, if you listen long enough, your customers will tell you what you want to hear. And after about 6 years of this, my customers started asking me for this product called the Invisible Fence. They said the kind of thing every salesman likes to hear. It doesn't matter how much it costs, we'll buy as many as you can get. And so called the company, they wouldn't sell to me. I decided to make my own. Jenny and I bet everything we owned, which was a total of $26,000. At least that's what it said on my balance sheet. I have no idea where the cash was, but they said that's what I was worth. We bet everything we owned on this one idea. Turned out to be a good bet. And one of the things that every entrepreneur will experience, especially if you have any success, is people come up to you and say, man, I wish I had had that idea. Ideas are easy. It's what you do with it afterwards. It's the making the big bet and then the blood, sweat, and tears that go along with trying to get something started. But to skip to the end, over the last 30 years, we've managed to have some success. Today we have a little over 900 employees, about $500 million in sales, with offices in 6 countries and selling all around the world, 4,600 products under the brands Pet Safe and Sport Dog, and one other brand, the actual Invisible Fence brand that the company that wouldn't sell to me is now part of ours. I got the good fun of being able to call them 15 years later and say, you wouldn't sell me the product, but would you sell me the company? And so we were able to actually buy the Invisible Fence Company. I share all that to say just a couple of things, and some things that I've learned, and what's valuable from doing that experience to this job. It's not really about understanding balance sheets and profit and loss statements. That's, I think, is way overrated. We have great CFOs and CBOs on the campuses that do all that. That's not my job. But I think one of the things you learn as being an entrepreneur is that you have to be willing to take some risk. You have to be creative. You have to challenge the status quo. I think for us to be successful in higher education, we're going to have to constantly be innovative and be creative, and hopefully being an entrepreneur will help bring that. Also, when you're running any kind of organization, and I've found this to be true, not just with the business, but also in government and also in nonprofits and now in higher education, there are a few key themes that you have to have. And here's the 4 things that I think you have to be successful in any organization. First, you have to have a mission, something that's aspiring and inspiring, something that excites you every day to come to work and to try to accomplish. And a great mission lives between the probable and the impossible. So what I mean by that, if you have a mission that's probable, if you come to work every day and you do your job the way you've always done it, and you can achieve that mission, well, it's a mission, but it doesn't get you really excited. It's kind of boring. You just show up and it'll happen. On the other hand, if you have a mission that's impossible, it's unbelievable. You just know that you won't get there. That's not very exciting either, because you don't believe in it. So a great mission lives somewhere in between. And I would like to suggest making this the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee is a mission like that. It's somewhere in between. We know it's going to be a stretch goal. We know we don't have all the great ideas, but we know we have the talent and the passion to get there. And so creating a mission is the first thing. The second thing is you got to have a strategy to get there, building a plan. Our campuses have plans to continue to advance the things that we're trying to work on. But you have to have a plan. We have our business interim dean here and other people in the business college, and I know we spend a lot of time talking about strategy, but I think strategy is probably the most overrated thing in business. You just need something simple and just execute on it. But have a strategy to get you there. The third thing, and probably the most important in any organization, is surrounding yourself with great people. It doesn't matter how great your mission and how great your plan is. If you don't have the right people, you're not going to accomplish it. If you have a mediocre mission and a mediocre plan, but great people, they'll find a way to not only get there, but exceed it. So making sure you have great people. And then finally, to have it all encompassed in a set of values that gives it purpose, why you're here, what your purpose is. And so those things I found help us be successful in business, but also in nonprofits, also in government, and I think it'll help us, or it's something that I plan to use the same here in higher education. And I'll say one last thing that I think is leverageable from that experience, that is understanding where you put your priorities when you want to have a successful organization. In a business, there are usually at least 5 key stakeholders. You have your customers. You got to make your customers happy. You have your employees. You have your suppliers that supply you all the products that you have. You have your community that you live and thrive in, and then finally you have your investors. And most people from the outside that haven't been in a business say, well, if you're in business, all you're doing is working for the shareholders. It's all about profit and working for your shareholders. But that would be wrong. I mean, that's the end result, but where you start, and there's a lot of people in business that will agree with this, and in other organizations will agree with this, is that, at least in my belief, is that where you start is with your employees. If you don't have engaged, enthusiastic employees, then you're not going to have happy customers. You're not going to be creating great products. If you don't have those things, you're not going to have a successful relationship in your community, with your suppliers, and ultimately with your investors. So it always starts with our employees. Here at the University of Tennessee, on all of our campuses, we wanted to make this the absolute best place in the state to work, and in higher education, the best place in the country to work. We're not there yet. We know we've got a lot of things we need to improve, but we're determined to make that happen. So those are things that I think that I can take from that experience to this. Second part of my career, if you call it this, would be moving into the nonprofit world. And because of the great team I've had in business, they allowed me to, over time, to spend most of my time and now all of my time finding ways to give back. And the most significant thing for me in my life was to be able to start something called Knox Achieves. 2007, I wanted to make Knoxville the most pet-friendly city in America. I met with our county mayor, and he said, I'll help you with your goal if you'll help me with mine. And his goal was to make sure every young person in Knox County had the opportunity to go to technical college and community college free of charge. We found the money to make sure it was a last dollar scholarship so they could go. I'm a Boy Scout. I was a Boy Scout master for 17 years, and In Boy Scouts, anytime you earn a badge, you have to do a community service project. So I said, well, if we're going to do this for these young people, they should do something back, a day's worth of community service each semester. And then we also wanted to match them up with a mentor, somebody to make sure that not only did they go to college, but they were successful. In the first year, we sent 300 kids to school. The next year, 400, then 600. Then one of my board members got elected governor and said, this is a good idea, roll it out across the state. The next thing you know, we're in 27 counties across the state, sent 5,000 young people to college in 2013, matched with 2,200 mentors. And at that point, I thought, you know, if I died just having done this, it would have been a good day's work, a good life's work. But then in 2013, so that's my philanthropy, I guess I should say, is that the one thing is that it's always been about education. And I believe in Boy Scouts, I'll go back to that. In Boy Scouts, we taught the boys about the oath and the law and the motto and the slogan, be prepared, do a good turn daily, but there was also the code of the outdoors. And the code of the outdoors said, you want to leave every trail better than you found it. And there was a literal part of that. When we're hiking down the trail, we'd pick up other people's gum wrappers, leave every campsite better than we found it. But it was always also shared with the boys. It's a metaphor for life. Anywhere we go, we want to make it a better place than we found it. So I've tried to live that, and the way that I believe you can make the world a better place is through education. I personally believe education is the inflection point of everything. If you want to solve any of the world's problems, it usually will start with education. So I've dedicated all my efforts toward that. So in 2013, Governor Haslam called me up and said, I want to give you a job in higher education in the state of Tennessee. And I said no. I said, you know, I'm a business guy. There's no way I'm going to ever work in government. It's too slow. It's too bureaucratic. But he's a good salesman. And we finally agreed for me to take a year as a volunteer, and we created a title called Special Advisor for Higher Education, and that year changed my life. It taught me that if you really want to make a difference in the world, you need to be in public service. And no matter how much you do in philanthropy or in business, there's no place that you can make a bigger impact on more people's lives than in a role in public service. So in that 1 year in 2013, we were able to create something called the Drive to 55, an overarching vision for our state to make sure 55% of our population has some certificate or degree by the year 2025. We also created a whole series of ways to get there, but one of which was to take that little idea that we started in Knoxville called Knox Achieves, that had become Tennessee Achieves, and create an endowment of over $400 million to be able to make sure that every single student in every single county in the state of Tennessee could go to technical college or community college free of charge with a mentor forever. And we called it the Tennessee Promise. And that was the year that taught me that if you really want to make the biggest difference, this is the way, public service is the way to do it. There was no way I could have ever been able to do that any other way. Through that process, I also got to know people in higher education and government, which has turned out to be a really valuable asset. In 2014, I got to serve for a year and a half as the chairman of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, which oversees all higher education in the state of Tennessee, and got to understand at a deeper level the policies that we could use as a state to help improve higher education across the state, which is also, I think, a very valuable experience. Governor Haslam called me back in 2015 to ask me to be Commissioner of Economic and Community Development. Again, I said no, but he said, look, you said that you wanted to make this K to J, kindergarten to a job. You want to make sure that everybody has this post-secondary certificate to get great jobs, so somebody's got to make sure the jobs are here. So I said yes, and it was a great experience. In 2017, we had all this momentum going toward the Drive to 55 and the economy and so many areas in the rural task force. And so I made the fateful decision to decide, well, I want to make sure we continue with all this success and momentum. I could either stay another 2 years and then hope that it continues, or I could take a chance, run for an office that will allow me to continue it and continue on. And at the time when I first made that decision, I started telling folks, you know, I don't really care about the job. It's about the mission. My campaign manager said, never say that again. You have to say you want the job. So I started saying that, but really the truth was it was always about the mission. That didn't work out, as we know. I look back, though, and this is maybe a bit of rationalization. Maybe it is, but you know, I think looking at doing our job now, our job as a University of Tennessee system is to serve the people of the state of Tennessee. The one great thing that I got to do during that period is go visit people in every single county. I know the superintendent of schools in Lake County and in Johnson County and the sheriffs, and I've toured 55 different jails across the state. If you ever want to commit a crime, by the way, ask me first, because you know you're going to go to jail. You might as well commit a crime in a place where they have a good jail. Do not commit a crime. I can just tell you by firsthand experience, do not commit a crime in Hamlin County. It's a really bad jail. Carter County, and the sheriff doesn't like me sharing this, but Carter County has a great jail. If you're going to commit a crime, do it in Carter County. But you learn these things, and I think there's some value in just knowing the people of Tennessee. If we're, as a university, here to serve the people of Tennessee, you need to know the people of Tennessee. And so I'm hopeful that that has also been a skill set. Again, I'll just conclude with saying I'm hopeful that the experiences that I've had as an entrepreneur in state government, as Commissioner of Higher Education, as Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, because a big part of what we do is supporting our economy, and then actually running across the state, getting to know the people of Tennessee has put me in a position to be able to serve you in the most effective way. And so far in the last 14 months, I've been able to draw on those in almost every day. And so I'm hopeful that it's given me a position, or put me in a position to help serve you. So what are we going to go do? So this is the exciting part. Now we're done with introductions. We never have to talk about that again. The exciting part is our future. How do we make this the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee? There's 5 key objectives that we've talked about. We've been talking about these for the last 14 months. I'll give you a highlight of each one and what we hope to do in the future. So the first of which is, it starts with student success. We want to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for more young people or people across our state to be able to get a better education so they can get a better job and a better life. And at the core, it's about our students. If we only do one thing, it would be about making sure that we provide a great experience and great opportunities for our students, and it starts with them. Good news is we had record enrollment, 51,582 students this past year. So that's the last count. It's the biggest enrollment we've ever had. Graduation rates, 6-year graduation rates are at all-time highs at all 3 of our undergraduate campuses, so we can be proud of that, but we need to do so much more. There's a lot that we can talk about. I'm going to be back here in May with your provost and others for a student success summit for 2 days, spending time with all the practitioners, figuring out more things we can do. But here's 3 things that we've worked on and will be key focuses. One is we want to make sure every student that entrusts their dreams with us is successful. And that means all of our underrepresented minorities. We want to make sure that we are a university that supports diversity and make sure that everybody that comes to our university can be successful. So what have we done? And I apologize for using a Knoxville analogy, but I think it's emblematic of what we can do across the state. When I first got to the University of Tennessee, and you go visit the campuses at UT Knoxville, they were very distraught, upset that the legislature had denied them having a vice chancellor for diversity. They had denied them funding to be able to support that office. So knowing that, I went to the legislature, and I had 41 different meetings, 41 separate independent meetings with different members of the legislature, and had a conversation with them about why this was so important. And it's pretty easy to make a compelling argument. The fact is, we want all students to succeed. We want all students to be able to be successful on our campuses. Nobody disagrees with that. And we know that some students are going to need additional support. And we want to make sure that we give them that support. It's not always the right thing to do economically, it's the right thing to do for the state. And when you make those arguments, you make those, having those discussions, every single one, all 41 agreed, well, of course, we believe in that. We want to make sure everybody is supported. And so they gave us permission, go hire your vice chancellor of diversity. So on my second day on the job, we were able to give the permission to the interim chancellor at UT to hire vice chancellor of diversity. And then when he came on board, we were able to provide the funding back for that office. They have a Pride Center that had, there was some reservation about moving it to a new, nicer location. We were able to do that. So we've made some significant progress on diversity there. And then as a result of that example, the University of Tennessee Chattanooga is now hiring their first vice chancellor of diversity. So I think it cascades across our state. But we got a lot more work to do. And we'll talk about how we can better support diversity on all of our campuses regularly. And I just had a conversation prior to coming in here, so I'll share this, that with the chancellors at our One UT Leadership Council meeting, we're talking about what additional roles the system can play. And the chancellors have rightly argued that this is really a campus function, but we could use your support. They've given me a list of other additional things that we can support them with. So we want to look both at support and accountability. We want to make sure that we provide the resources and the support they need to do their job, but at the same time, me personally, I will be holding them accountable. I've got reviews coming up within the next 30 days, and this isn't a surprise to Keith, though I'm making eye contact now, that we will be talking about diversity and about your progress. But that's part of my job, is to hold our chancellors who are responsible for this on each of our campuses accountable and making sure that we're making progress. A second big thing is about making sure that we are accessible to students all across the state of Tennessee. University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and I think by association we can all share in this mission, was anointed as the land-grant university for the state of Tennessee in 1862 under the Morrill Act with Abraham Lincoln. Hopefully you guys remember that, but if you don't, 1862, prior to the land-grant Act, or the Morrill Act, and the land-grant for creating land-grant institutions, higher education was really something for the elite, for the rich. It was really relegated to a few liberal arts colleges, mostly in the Northeast, where people went to study law and politics and government, and it really wasn't for the average person. And so with the Morrill Act, creating the land-grant institution, it was a very revolutionary idea. We were going to create universities throughout the country, and they were going to be focused on what they call the mechanical arts, which is engineering or commerce, business, things that people would be able to learn and use in their everyday life and build our nation and our economy. And that kind of education was revolutionary, but the most revolutionary part was we were going to provide this education to the working person. It was going to be a ladder up for the working class and the middle class. This was a revolutionary idea at the time, and that's something that we want to live up to today. We want to make sure that we're providing that opportunity for everybody across our state. Now, recently, or a lot of times we talk about the U.S. News and World Report rankings, and you probably won't hear me talk about them very much, other than every now and then recently that UT Knoxville just got ranked 44th, up from 52nd. Now that's great, and I'll brag about it a bit, but I'll just share with you that when I do, I'm being a little hypocritical, because I really don't like the rankings, and here's one reason why. One of the ways in which they move you up in the rankings is based on selectivity. That means how many students did we reject? If you reject like 80% of the students, that's pretty good. If you want to be like in the top, and you look at it, the top 10 schools in the U.S. News and World Reports, they reject like 95% of the students. So I think that's totally wrong. That's exactly the opposite of who we want to be. We want to be known for who we include, not who we exclude. We want to be more accessible. So one of the things we did last year, and we announced last year, is something called the UT Promise. And the UT Promise says this: in the state of Tennessee, if your family income is under $50,000, and that's over half the population of the state of Tennessee, then if you could academically earn the right to come to UT Martin or UT Chattanooga or UT Knoxville, then you can come free of tuition and fees. There's no other system across the country that's ever done that. We're the first. And we believe that this is going to provide more access to more students. It'll do at least three things. More students will be able to afford to be able to come to our universities. Second, we'll be able to retain them. Fewer students are going to drop out because of financial reasons. And finally, they'll be able to graduate with less debt. 46% of all the students across the state of Tennessee that graduate from any of our campuses graduate with zero debt. By the way, that's a story we need to get out. Too often, too many parents are being told that you go to college, you're going to graduate with $100,000 in debt and not end up with a good job. Both those things are false. Our students get great jobs. They graduate, half of them, with zero debt. But with this program, more students will graduate with less or no debt. So we're excited about this program. Going forward, we need to execute on it. There was an idea last year. We promoted it. Your chancellor and I went to high schools all across this region and had some really great sessions being able to promote it. But we had a goal of trying to recruit 2,000 students in this first year. The great news is, if you haven't heard, in this first year, we managed to recruit 7,200. At least we have 7,200 applications, which is a historic increase. Now, we believe that probably half of those students, for whatever reason, won't actually meet the qualifications. Either their family makes too much money, or maybe they didn't have the academic qualifications that they needed to. But still, it's a huge new class of students that we're going to be able to recruit and provide access to our universities. The second big goal, and then the big thing that we're trying to execute on now, and this is my ABC moment of this talk. Everybody knows what the ABCs are? Somebody? Where's our marketing and sales class students? ABCs, always be closing. Anytime you get a mic, you got to have a close, ask for something. So my ABC moment is, here's how we make this program successful. We're going to match each one of these students up with a mentor. Somebody like you or me, and I'm looking at you in particular because you can actually go online, even as I'm speaking, and I won't be offended, on your phone and go to utpromise.tennessee.edu and sign up to be a mentor. Your chancellor's a mentor, I'm a mentor, every one of our board members are mentors. If we can find the time to do it, you can find the time to do it. But if this program is going to be successful, it's going to be because of the support we give these students. It's one thing to get them into the university, we want to make sure they graduate and be successful. And the mentorship is a key part of that. So right now, we're in the process of executing on that part. And we've got 540 mentors today. We need at least 700, so it's at least a 1-to-5 match. If we can get more mentors, that's better. But it's a key part of how we make this program work and how we can make this the best decade in the history of the University of Tennessee by one student at a time. Finally, with regards to student success, to say one of the other things that it's going to be a critical focus in 2020 and beyond is on our students' mental health. The comptroller did the sunset hearing, something that we do every 4 years, where they review all the strengths and weaknesses of our university and identify areas in which we need to do more. And one of the things they highlighted to us last fall, and which wasn't a surprise, was that we needed to do more to support our students' mental health. We're doing a lot, and I don't want to criticize any of the teams that are working really hard on our campuses now to support our students, but we need to give them more resources and more support. The fact is that we have a mental health crisis across our nation, and our state's not accepted. And we've got to find ways to catch up to the crisis. We've been doing more, but the crisis is accelerated faster than we've been able to keep up. We've got to do more to support our students. We had a summit on mental health across the state last November. We've got a task force that's working on it. We've got a lot of work to do, but it's critical for our students to be successful. So those are a few things within the student success. 4 other buckets. I won't spend as much time on the other 4. The next is we want to increase our research and our discovery, finding new ways in which we can do a better job of creating, fulfilling our research mission. Good news is last year we set a new record, $404 million worth of research expenditures, the most we've ever done. But we can do more. One of the biggest assets within the system that has been underutilized is our relationship with Oak Ridge National Labs. We are fortunate to have a university system, one of only 3 in the nation that manages a national lab, and I'd like to suggest we have the best national lab with Oak Ridge National Lab in Oak Ridge. They have a tremendous amount of resources that our universities, our faculty, our students can tap into. And we were going to make sure that we're doing a better job of taking advantage of that. We created something called the Oak Ridge Institute last year. This year we've got to execute on it. We're getting support from the federal and the state government. We believe that it's going to be able to allow us to hire 120 new faculty, 400 new graduate students, and do an additional $150 million in research around national or areas of national security like artificial intelligence, like bioinformatics, and like quantum communications. Those are areas in which the nation is at risk of losing the lead, and it's critical to our national security, and there's no better place in the world to do that kind of research than with Oak Ridge National Labs. And I know your chancellor has had conversations with our lab director, Thomas Zachariah, about ways in which UT Martin will be able to be associated with and take advantage of that. So this is not just a Knoxville initiative, it's a system-wide initiative, and we're going to make sure that every student across our state has some way to be able to benefit from this relationship. On the third area, this is about it was part of our land grant mission, is about service. How do we give back and how do we support our state? There's a lot of things that we can do. I'll share one example of what we've done and an example of what we might do. So when I came to this job, one of the things I thought that I would be giving up the ability to have any influence on is the opioid and addiction crisis we have across our state. And one of the things you do learn when you travel across the state, both as commissioner and applying for another job, is that no matter what we try to do on a positive side, if we don't solve this addiction and opioid crisis, it's going to derail everything. And every place I would go, whether it was Johnson County or Lake County or every place in between, and you have a conversation and share stats about this crisis to a group of 10 people or 50 people, every time, literally, and this is not every single time we talk about it, somebody at the end of the meeting would come up to me afterwards and say, you know, I just lost my son, I just lost my daughter, I just lost my spouse because of an addiction or opioid overdose. And it's real, it's literally killing our state. We have to solve it. Well, the exciting news is the University of Tennessee is doing some amazing things. as I went across the state, the Health Science Center was doing great work, the College of Social Work, Oak Ridge National Labs, UT Medical Center. All across the state, we have resources that are working to fight this problem. But the problem has been, this is an overarching theme across the UT system, the problem has been nobody was talking to each other. Nobody, in fact, the people that were working on this crisis were all doing it in silos. They never even knew that the other people were working on it. One of our big opportunities going forward is bringing resources together. And so we had a summit with all the UT experts back in January of 2019. There's about 100 of them together. And we realized pretty quickly, one, it was great to get together, but two, we need to be involving other nonprofits in the state to really be effective. So in August of last year, we had our first summit on opioids and addiction, and we expected to have about 300 people show up. We had over 700 people from across the state. It was the biggest gathering ever of people that were passionate and experts on this subject. We made a lot of great connections, and a lot of new initiatives have been started. It's going to be a long-term process, but the thing that experience demonstrated to me was many things. One, if you want to bring people together from all different perspectives, there's no other better convener than the University of Tennessee. We're the nonpartisan trusted advisor. We can call people together to focus on big problems. Second big thing is that we have sustainability. We can tackle problems that might take a decade or two to solve. You know, if you're in government, you have a 2-year, 4-year term, so people kind of tend to think, I can tell you this first-hand experience, they kind of think in 4-year terms. So what can we get done in our 4 years? I'm not going to worry about something that the next person is going to have to be in charge of. But as the University of Tennessee, we've been around for 225 years. We can look at long-term problems and solve them. And then lastly, we have the resources to be able to address these. We have campuses literally in every county if you count our extension offices. We have 51,000 students, 12,000 employees. We have the geographic reach, and we also have the intellectual capacity to solve nearly any problem. So I think one of the biggest opportunities that the University of Tennessee collectively has is to identify the grand challenges of our state and solve them. Our fourth big objective, and this is, my CFO is not in the room, and so he's not here to be offended as he always is when I say, being more effective and more efficient isn't very sexy, but it's critical to what we do. And one of the things that we can do together is find ways in which we can collaborate and do the operational things that we have to do to support our students and our faculty in a more effective and a more efficient way. And by doing so, we'll save millions of dollars that we can then turn back in to support our students and our faculty. So that's another big objective, is finding new ways in which we can do that. One of the big initiatives going forward will be something that we've been working on, is a new ERP system, which we'll all be sharing. Again, not very exciting or sexy, but it's critical to us doing our work better. And the final thing, the fifth thing, is just building our brand. I came here, our brand was not where it needs to be. We've got great stories, we're doing great work, but the people of Tennessee didn't know it. They were getting focused too often on a few sensational stories that they might read. There was great work that's being done. We had to build that brand. One of the things I believe in is transparency, and so on the third day, we created Transparent UT, a website in which you can get information on anything about the University of Tennessee. If you've got great stories to tell, you don't want to hide, so we want to make sure that we weren't the secretive, opaque organization, but one that was transparent. And because of those things, we've also built a better relationship with the state legislature. And I'll point to a few things. Last year was the highest amount of funding we've ever gotten from the legislature for our operational funds. They gave us an extra $10 million for security, a big portion of which is coming to UT Barton. They gave us money for new Capitol buildings. This year, we surpassed last year's record and got additional funding for a new record in funding. We've got, for the first time ever, or the first time in many years, an extra $2.2 million in recurring funds to support the great work that our extension officers do across the state. We got an extra $6 million in operational funds for the Health Science Center, and it's not done yet. We've got a lot of work still to do, and more funds that I think will be able to come as a result of the fact that we've built our brand back and we've restored the trust with the legislature. Those are the 5 big things that we're going to do, but the most important thing, and we talked about this in an earlier meeting, if someone asked about, well, what do you think is the most important thing you can do while you're here? And the most important thing I can do will be creating a One UT culture. Each of the things we just talked about are transactional. We're going to have other big transactions. There'll be another idea like the UT Promise that we'll come up with in the next year or two that will also be important. But the most important thing that we want to leave our system with when we leave is the idea of how we can work together and be more effective. And I get this, so in case I'll save somebody the job of having to point this out to me. Yes, every one of our universities are different. We're all very different, but if we're all the same, there would be no reason to work together. We wouldn't learn from each other. The strength in working together is by our differences. And when we work together, I think there's not a single problem in the state of Tennessee that we can't solve. And so I'm excited about working together with all of you over these next few years to create this One UT culture, to succeed in all 5 of those objectives, and then by doing all that, to make this the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. And I'm looking forward to serving with you, and with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Questions? We did have some questions that came in online, and some of them dealt with the idea of communication, and there were concerns about, and you can address this, how you can be able to communicate with UT Martin, and by extension, our centers as well, and being able to connect and communicate with them.
Well, there's a lot of ways in which we communicate, but the most important one is just in personal contact. So as I mentioned before, I've been to UT Martin now 17 times, UT Chattanooga 24, the Health Science Center 10. Don't really count Knoxville because I park there when I work there, but plenty of times there. I've also been to all 5 of our centers, and I plan on going back again. But I love visiting the centers. I think they're a critical part of our outreach. There's so many young people of all ages, across rural West Tennessee that would not have access to higher education if it wasn't for our centers. I've also been to 77 of our 95 extension offices. We'll make sure that, and I think I'll be the first president to ever make all 95. In fact, at least half the extension offices, I'll meet somebody that says they've been there for 30 years and they've never actually seen a president come by. So I'm pretty sure I'll have that title. So it just takes a lot of work and getting out and visiting and listening and taking time. But we'll have other mechanisms too to be able to find ways to make sure that we're listening and staying in touch. We send out Monday notes, where we share everything that we're talking about to all of our chancellors and all of our leadership across the state. But we'll continue to find other ways to communicate. But at the end of the day, it'll be personal. It's about me hitting the roads and doing sessions like this as much as I possibly can.
Very good.
All right, another question for you will be, what have you learned in your short time as interim president that will help you guide and make decisions in the future?
Well, I think I maybe touched on a few of those earlier, but I think I learned where I think the system can provide benefit to our campuses. I think the way we do that is through providing effectiveness and efficiency by providing connectivity and providing advocacy. And so one of the things is working together, we can find ways to do things more efficiently to save money for our students. 2, we can be better advocates for our campuses working together at the state level. And then 3, we can be able to be more effective when we all putting those connections together, like what we did with the opioid summit. But also think that working with this past year, I've learned about how much people across the state believe in the university and how many people have ownership. One thing that's so I've talked about the ways in which things are similar. One thing in which is very different at a public university versus a business versus nonprofit versus government. At a business, you have to have your employees to buy in, right? But if they don't buy in, they don't believe in your vision, you just have a conversation and say, this probably isn't a good fit, and they leave. At state government, you need 51% of the people to buy in to be able to get something done. But you never really have the opportunity to say, Art, you don't really buy into the vision. I think you'd probably be better off in Kentucky. So we're kind of in it together. But at a public university, everybody feels they own our university and and they do. All of our students, this is their university. We're here to serve them. Their parents, in often cases, are paying the tuition. They feel they have ownership in the university. Our faculty are the key drivers in our mission. They have ownership. But also the people of the state of Tennessee. We are the public university, so people in the state of Tennessee feel like they have ownership, 6.6 million individuals. So I find that leading a university means sometimes taking a little bit slower approach, taking more time to get more input from more people. And so that's been something that I've learned over this last 14 months.
Any questions from the audience? Some of the other questions that came in, there were a number that dealt with diversity and inclusion, and you spoke to that already. But what would you say concerning, especially with faculty and staff, of making sure that we live up to being able to be a diverse and inclusive organization?
Yeah, I appreciate the way you asked that question, because I think it's right. Now, oftentimes when we talk about diversity, we're talking about it in the lens of students. And we absolutely want to have a diverse student population and make sure that we're giving them all the support they need to be successful. But at the same time, we need our faculty and our staff to reflect the student population and to reflect the population of our state. So we need to also strive to have a diverse faculty and a diverse administration as well.
Thank you.
One of the questions, I heard a lot about internal, or what I call United States probably, goals and objectives. In our strategic plan, what do you have done, or are we planning to do in order to expose the University of Tennessee internationally beyond the national borders?
Yeah, so a great question. Actually, each of the campuses, well, I know at least Knoxville and others are going to be looking at their longer-term strategic plan, and one of the key pillars will be to become more global universities and be able to bring more students from around the world. And to do that, we need to market ourselves better. And so one of the things we're doing is trying to do more international outreach, both with, and I know it's kind of at a bad time considering all the national crisis that we have, but once that's passed, we'll be spending a lot of more emphasis on study abroad opportunities for our students and research abroad opportunities for our faculty, but also trying to bring more international students here and having more, I think that those collaborations, those relationships are the most effective way to build those that long-term brand internationally. I don't see us putting billboards up in Japan or India, but by building those relationships over the long term, we'll build the reputation to be able to attract students from around the world.
Any questions?
We have one over here.
President Boyd, one of the things that I think many of us look for is leadership, whether it's the president or chancellors or the executive officers who are, they're ready to deal with a crisis when it comes. And I think, what's on a lot of our minds is the crisis we're currently dealing with the virus. Vanderbilt just stated that they're going to suspend classes for a couple weeks. Berea College just came out and said that they're canceling the entire semester starting this Friday. Just interested to know what is going on within the system around that particular topic.
So I guess it wouldn't be a crisis if it was something that we've dealt with on a regular basis. So this is a crisis because it's new, and it's something that we're trying to find our way through. But I think that anytime you have any type of crisis, the key is communication and openness and transparency. And so one of the things we're doing at each campus, there's a team that is meeting on a daily basis, gathering the new information and sharing that with the rest of the broader team to make sure that we're analyzing all the data as it's coming in. And then collectively across the system, there's a meeting every afternoon where all the leadership from each campus are comparing best practices. And it's evolving. And just this morning, we're reading that all these, or not all, but several campuses had decided to close or suspend classes. And we had a conversation, the chancellor in Knoxville and I, just a few hours ago about that situation. And so it's still ongoing. We're still collecting data, still having conversations. But on that particular case, Vanderbilt had actually had a student that had contracted the virus. And so their reaction was partly a reaction to that one student. The one thing that's interesting is that we're thinking through is they're not actually sending kids home. So they're still on the campus. They're still going to their dorms. They're still having lunch. They're still doing all these other interactions. So we're debating whether not going to the class but still hanging out in the dorm is really going to be that effective. I don't know the answer. All I can say is that I think in my experience, in dealing with a crisis, you have to have a line of open communication and be as transparent as possible. Make sure that we're making yourself accessible to all information. We're in touch with the CDC every day. We're in touch with the Tennessee Higher Education Commission every day. We're in touch with the governor's new task force on the coronavirus. And we have one of our faculty members, an MD on infectious disease from the Health Science Center that's on the task force. So we're in communication with all these people, making sure that we've got all the best data and then trying to make the right decisions as we go along.
Do you have a question, sir? One of the other questions that came in, the UT board has been reconstituted and you're now working with that. What are some of the comments that you have about working with our current board and those folks?
I really appreciate you asking that question because I just remembered I made a huge mistake. So Chancellor Carver rightly made a good point to introduce me. You always you try to make sure you introduce your bosses. And we have one of my bosses here with me today, Brad Box, who's one of our Board of Trustees members. I really appreciate him being here. I'm going to let me share a thought, and then I'll ask for a response. But I've been on over 30 boards, from business to nonprofits to committees with government like the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. In my experience, I've never seen a board work harder, more tirelessly than our current Board of Trustees. There's 11 of them. I know from a fact that a week before their board meeting, they get 500 pages worth of documents that they have to read and study prior to that board meeting. They have all kinds of additional meetings, hearings that they have to go to. They're constantly working for the University of Tennessee. They're all really successful, smart people, and they all do this free of charge. I've never seen a board work harder for less reward than this particular board. I have a great relationship with them. They're passionate about our university. And the one thing I don't feel like we do enough of is to say thank you for their work. So we take a moment and say thank you. We're giving a round of applause. We're blessed to have a great board. Thank you for that question. If I didn't submit that one, I should have.
All right, a follow-up question to that. Do you have any plans to add a voting student member to the Board of Trustees in the near
Great
future?
question. We're going to address two at the same time. So that question could be voting student member or a voting faculty member. So first qualification, adding either is a decision that the legislature has to make. So they will have to decide. I don't get to decide. I can go advocate, but the legislature will make that final decision. But before I would go advocate for either of those two things, the Board of Trustees would have to ask me to do that. It's their board, and these are my bosses. So they would have to come to me and say, this is what we want. I can share that the board is looking over all the facts and trying to decide what is the best thing to do. However, I can share this, and you know this, but when the Focus Act was created, we did create a voting faculty member and a voting student member on each of the advisory boards for each campus. So at the campus level, there's a voting faculty member and a voting student, and the advisory boards are focused on budgets and on strategy, or tuition and strategy. And so they do have a big role in a fairly small board of only, I think, 7. So I think they have an important role there. At the Board of Trustees level, we have the Committee on Education, Research, and Service, which is really where the bulk of the academic work is done. And there's a voting faculty member and a voting student on that. We do have a student voice on the Board of Trustees, but they don't vote. I can say this, too, that looking over the last, I've did a bit of research on this, over the last 5 years, there's been like 350 votes. They've all been unanimous. So the vote isn't really so important as the voice. And the student voice on that Board of Trustees is always looked to. At least in my 14 months on the job and the 4 board meetings I've been to, the Board of Trustees recognize we're here to serve the students. And so they're always asking our student to share their voice on these issues. But regarding specifically to your question, I'm here at the pleasure of our board. If they tell me to go advocate for those positions, I'll be doing that.
Any other questions from the audience?
Good afternoon. I'd like to know, with your leadership and management experience, how you have effectively led people to your vision. And in other words, maybe it was a hard sell. And so how did you convince them to buy in to your vision when it maybe seemed almost unobtainable?
It's a really good question. And just a few things popped into my head, so I'm not sure if I'm going to pick the best example, but I'll pick the one that maybe be the thing that I could maybe point to as maybe being one of the biggest successes I've had the opportunity to do, and that was creating the Tennessee Promise, because it wasn't easy. So with the Tennessee Promise, sounds easy now, but when we first had the idea, I went around to all the different university presidents. We're talking about different things, and actually I'll just confess this, I don't think I've ever shared this with Keith before. So I go visit with Joe DiPietro. We're talking about the Hope Scholarship, and Joe and everybody else told me this: whatever you do, don't touch the Hope Scholarship. Don't touch the lottery. Well, that's where all the money was. If you're going to affect change, you're going to have to do something. But everybody said, whatever you do, don't touch that. It took a lot of debate in the legislature to change it, and if you open that up, it's going to be a big can of worms. Whatever you do, don't touch that. But the way you affected change is simply by doing the research, sharing the fact, or getting the facts, figuring it out that if you really want to make the biggest difference, this was the way that you could do it. And then gradually having conversations with all the people that needed to support it, and you build up a consensus over a period of time. So I think the leadership is about building consensus, having your facts, and then they say, in God we trust. Everybody else bring data. Make sure you have your data, and then spend a lot of time having conversations and building a consensus. And then over time, it's everybody's idea. And at the end of the day, on that particular one, the governor had to say, it was back to having a good idea, a lot of people's ideas, the governor had to say, yes, I believe in this, let's do it. But it was a year process, and it was about, I guess, about getting your facts, building a lot of consensus, and then making the decision. That's a great question. I may have a different answer the next time you ask me that the next meeting, but that's the one that comes to mind just now.
All right. Are there any more audience questions? All right.
In January, Governor Lee signed an executive order to offer 12 weeks paid leave, paid family leave for employees that had been working for at least a year. In moving forward as the UT president, is it one of your goals to maybe offer a similar policy for all UT employees?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we've already announced that we're going to introduce a policy. It'll be effective July 1. And I would say, so I was, we got a little bit of our thunder stolen when the governor made his announcement. We've been actually talking about doing this since last August. And it was actually a faculty member in Knoxville that came to the chancellor and I at one of her open sessions that shared that she wished that we had a family leave policy. She was 6 months pregnant, so whatever we would come up with wasn't going to help her. But she just said, I wish you would consider this. We just started talking about it. I got with Chancellor Carver and the other chancellors, and we said, let's do this. It's the right thing to do. And so we started developing a plan, and we had this big announcement on the Wednesday of the week that the governor made his announcement on the Monday. So it was like, well, darn, he stole our thunder. But we had been planning on doing it anyway. We announced the following week that we would have a plan, but what we decided to do, instead of announcing all the details, but it would be better to wait and see what the governor's plan ends up being. And so while he proposed something, the legislature is now looking at it and potentially going to modify it. So we're going to wait till they come up with their policy and then modify ours accordingly. We'll learn from their process. But we will have a family leave policy, and it will be effective July 1. Details to be determined by a task force that's working on it right now. Thank you. We're going to make this the best place in the state to work and the best higher education university or institution in the country to work. We have to have a family leave policy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I was working outside when this started, so I missed the first 20 minutes or so.
Okay, I can redo it.
I mean, I love it. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. Very quickly, are there any plans to expand the UT educational agenda to include what would probably be called vocational or technical training for things not traditionally considered academic, but more vocational technical training, yeah. I think it's small engines, you know, this sort of thing that you'd learn between high school or in a community college kind of setting.
Yeah, let me just make a more broad statement, and that is that I think we have to look at how we disseminate knowledge in new ways. You know, if this was no, I'm not going to say it, I'm sort of say a company. So what we are is as an organization that has provided 3 packets of information for over 100 years. You can get a bachelor's degree, you can get a master's degree, you can get a PhD. In today's world, people are needing knowledge quicker and faster in smaller bite sizes. We're looking at micro-credentials. We want to look at other ways, and we're looking at more online education. We need to look at all ways in which we can provide, disseminate knowledge to the people of Tennessee. And it could be more vocational courses. We do have a great system already in our state that provides technical education through what we call the TCATs, the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, and through our community colleges. So we'd want to be careful to make sure that we're not duplicating services or programs that they already have. And one of the things we do want to do is work closer with those institutions to make sure that we give our students the opportunity to transition to our 4-year schools if they want to. You know, an idea has been talked about to be able to have a facility in which a student can go and get their certificate at a TCAT, and in the same building, then after that year, go over to a community college classroom, their associate's degrees, maybe the TCATs, and offers welding, and then they go and get a mechatronics certificate or associate's degree, and then they decide, you know, I'm excited about what I've learned, and I just walk across the hallway and maybe get a mechanical engineering degree. But working closer with the people that are already offering some of those services is definitely something that we want to do.
Other questions?
Hello, Nasser. How are you? Great to see you.
I've already asked my question. Football. Any comments?
Football. Yeah, we are going to continue to play football in the state of Tennessee during my term, and I can guarantee and stand on that platform. And I think at least one of our universities this year is undefeated in football. We played 1 game and we're 1-0. We're going to try to keep that going. I don't know if they had any other questions on that, but you know, with regards to athletics, I will say it's not really the president's job. I wish it was. I'll take all credit for any victories, but the fact is that that's a campus function, and I just make sure that our chancellors have the support they need to continue the traditions they have.
Other questions? I will say as a thank you and a compliment, and also as a question. As a member of the group who represents the faculty, as a faculty senate president, before the board meetings, we and campus representatives, we have a meeting, and at that meeting, you and the head of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Compton, will come in. You will listen to us. You will talk to us about what's going on with the system. And very often, I appreciate the dialogues that we have, and it makes a difference, and I appreciate that. We talk a lot about the opportunities that the UT system has. What are some of the threats that you see that face the UT system?
You know, when we talk about the opportunities and the threats, I'll say they're really 2 sides of the same coin. And the biggest thing is I think our biggest threat is just not working together, getting isolated, working in silos, not working together as a team. Which the opposite side is working together as a team, collaborating, provides us the best opportunity to be successful. And when we're successful, we can tell our story. We can tell our story, we'll be stronger with the legislature and with the people of the state of Tennessee.
Very good.
All right, I have a question that was submitted. Are you prepared to be an ally for LGBT plus students, faculty, and staff on campus in the face of a hostile state legislator and governor?
Short answer is yes. Be an advocate and an ally for the LGBTQ and really A to Z, all of our students. And I think I've demonstrated in this last 14 months, you know, my commitment by getting a Vice Chancellor of Diversity in Knoxville and their funding, supporting our Chancellor in Chattanooga, getting their new Vice Chancellor of Diversity. So we'll continue to help support all of our students in every way possible.
Any questions? one of the questions that came in is that in a position like yours, when someone takes it on, very often they leave a mark on it. What mark do you hope to leave on the presidency of the UT system?
I'm hopeful, in collaboration and with the support of all of us in this room and all of us all across the state, that one day, 15, 20, 30 people will look back and say, this was the greatest decade in the history of the University of Tennessee. And if they point to one thing, they'll point to a lot of things like a UT Promise, like the Oak Ridge Institute, some of those tactical things, but they'll say the big thing was that team changed the culture. They changed the culture of a one UT in which people all across the state came together to make a difference for students and for the state of Tennessee. They had a real impact on the lives of the people of Tennessee as a result.
Any other questions from the audience?
Since I have that situation before, I'm just skilling me since you stated that you stayed at a motel with $18 a night. Did they keep the light on for you?
They gave me some kindling and some matches, so I usually had a light. Wasn't for the light, you wouldn't be able, the bugs wouldn't know how to get in.
I have the situation.
Oh.
I
Andy.
want to make it.
Yeah. President Boyd, I've heard you mention before your feelings on student success, and do you mind sharing with the room sort of how you feel about that and how you would like to see that played out with our
I think
campus?
there's a lot of things we do. We give back to the community, but there's other nonprofits that do that. We do research, but there are other organizations like National Labs that do that. What defines us is our ability to support students and helping students become successful. And while I've bragged about our graduation rates, the 6-year graduation rates are at all-time highs, the truth is we're still having way too many students graduate or not graduate. Students that have entrusted their dreams, their beliefs, their hopes for the future with us, and we failed them. We didn't give them the support they need. I have a question that I've been asking for the last 14 months. I ask the students, I ask faculty, I ask staff all the time. It's a fun question because you get some really good answers and get people to think out of the box. And if I haven't asked you this question, just know sometime we'll be alone in a hallway and I'll corner you and I'll ask you this question so you can be thinking about your answer. The question is, and it's the preface of, or the premise of it isn't totally true, but the premise is, the question is, so as the president of the University of Tennessee, I have unlimited power. I have unlimited budget, and I can change any law, and I could grant you one wish. What would it be? I ask that question a lot. I've asked it to 77 different extension offices. I got a list of over 300 wishes from the extension offices alone. I want to ask each of you that same question. And I've had fun asking that question because people really do come up with some really great ideas. Sometimes, like one extension office, the lady said, well, I really want a new printer. I thought, really? You know, just out of everything in the world, a new printer, but it was important to her. But you get some really good ideas. But for the first time ever, somebody flipped the tables on me, and Provost Cavalier just asked me at a meeting earlier today, says, so what's your answer to that question? So I'd like to take the time to think more about it, but my answer then might be still the answer I have 5 years from now, and that is, I would have my unlimited resources to provide counselors and support for every student so that we never leave a single student behind. Wouldn't it be great if every single student that came to our school, thank you, like the Marines say we never leave anybody behind, we never leave a single student behind. Any student that comes to us with their dream of getting an education leaves here with that dream fulfilled. That would be my wish.
Any questions? All right, this time I'm going to turn it back over to Chancellor Carver.
Before I get kicked off the stage, I'll just make a concluding statement and simply say thank you for this opportunity. This is the biggest opportunity I think I'll ever have in my life to be able to serve, and it's because of all of you. It's great to be on this team. When I was at ECD, remember we had a small team, And I used to use the analogy with them as be like your one opportunity to be in the Super Bowl. And I used to use the metaphor of Dan Marino. So a lot of people are young here, so you don't know who Dan Marino is. But he was a really famous quarterback. He played for the Miami Dolphins. And he was amazing. His rookie year, he passed for all these records as a rookie year. And he went to the Super Bowl. And unfortunately, he lost. You know, it's Dan Marino. He's so amazingly talented. He's going to be back to the Super Bowl many times. He never got to go back. You never know when it's going to be your chance to be on the big stage and play in the big game. This is our chance to be on the big stage and play in the big game. Together, we can do something epic. And so I'm so excited to be a part of this team, and I'm so excited about all the great things we're going to be able to do together. Just thank you for this opportunity, and thanks for letting me come and visit with you today. Thank you all.
And with that, we are dismissed. Thank you for being here.